Boa tarde. Vamos dar início a uma sessão extremamente interessante, que é sobre laudo estruturado e léxico em imagem radiológica em radiologia oncológica. Eu tenho o prazer aqui de estar presencialmente com a doutora Nathalie, o doutor Fábio, depois vou fazer apresentações devidas. E nós vamos dar início com duas apresentações. Uma delas é da doutora Hricak, que é a diretora, chefe, professora, conhecida por todos, responsável pelo setor de imagem do Memorial Sloan Kettering, em Nova York. E ela vai falar sobre imagem oncológica, uma perspectiva global, e por que devemos nos importar. E logo em seguida, teremos um outro professor do Memorial Sloan Kettering, que é o Dr. Hedvig, que é Associate Professor do Memorial Sloan Kettering, e vai falar sobre relatório padronizado e léxico, experiência do Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Então, nós vamos ter essas duas aulas em sequência, dando mais ou menos um pouco da experiência e da perspectiva do que ocorre hoje no Memorial Sloan Kettering, e depois nós passamos para as próximas apresentações. Muito obrigado.
Hello, everybody. First of all, my most sincere apology for not being able to be present with all of you in person. I am really sorry. Second, to the organizing committee, thank you very much for inviting me. I so much appreciate the opportunity to share with you about oncologic imaging and global perspective. Why should we care? Before we try to answer that question, I do need to show my disclosures. My disclosures are as follows. I serve on the Board of Directors IBA, Board of Directors Page AI, External Advisory Board for Johns Hopkins Cancer Center, International Advisory Board, University of Vienna, both Scientific Committee and Board of Trustees for DECA-FETE, and Scientific Advisory Board for Eurobioimaging. I think we can all safely say today that unfortunately we do have a cancer pandemic. Looking by the numbers, in 2000 there were 10 million cases. Then there was a prediction for 2020, and it was alarming. It said there will be 50% increase, and by 2020, we will have 15 million newly diagnosed cancer patients. Well, it actually is much worse. By 2020, we had 19.3 million new cases. Now, there is another 20-year prediction and said that cases will increase for another 47%. Let's see what happens, but we do know that lately, globally, there is increase in cancer incidence far beyond our expectations. Furthermore, cancer is a leading cause of premature death in a number of countries around the world. Premature means age 30 to 70. As you can see, in Canada, United States, Argentina, Chile, Peru, as well as Australia, China, and Western Europe, cancer is a number one cause of death, followed by cardiovascular disease. In Brazil and the surrounding countries, cancer is actually the number one cause of death is cardiovascular disease, followed by cancer, but considering the number of cases and the number of premature deaths, it is worrisome for us all. Those are recent statistics from GlobalCan. When we look at the global cancer statistics for female, the world is awfully pink. And breast cancer is by far prevalent in all parts of the world, except what we see in Bolivia, it's cervical cancer, and big parts of Africa is cancer of the cervix as well. When we look at the mortality, then the lung cancer prevails in Canada, Northern America, in Australia, but in Latin and South America, we are still too pink. And breast cancer is a number one cause of mortality. As policy are being made, having those data on both incidence and mortality and the type of cancer is extremely important. As you see, and I know you know, Peru is really stomach cancer is a number one cause of mortality in females. In male, for the incidence, the world is divided between being green and prostate cancer or blue and lung cancer. But when it comes to mortality, then the lung cancer obviously prevails. There are pockets and countries in Latin and South America and Mexico that prostate cancer is a number one cause of mortality, but I do think we can say that addressing lung cancer in males is extremely important. I do like to show you this slide, the data from the Lancet from 2022. The top 3 global risk factors for cancer are smoking, drinking, and obesity. And they are responsible for over 40% of cancer deaths worldwide. And they are certainly responsible for a number of cancer deaths in Latin and South America. How about childhood cancer? We can look at the diagnosed incidence and maybe feel good as we look at Latin and South America, saying it's really not that bad. Actually, the incidence is lower than the United States, but not so fast. Almost 45% of children will be underdiagnosed in the next 30 years. Total incidence, as reported in the Lancet Oncology Commission on Childhood Cancer, actually shows that in Latin and South America, childhood cancer incidence is a problem. And furthermore, we need to remember that more than 80% of childhood cancer actually occurs in the low-middle-income country where being underdiagnosed is far too common. Looking at the data in more granular way, as we look at South America, Caribbean, and Central America. Even in South America, 40% of children are underdiagnosed. Underdiagnosed means delayed diagnosis, misdiagnosis, or never even seeing a patient. In Central America, that approaches 50%, and we do unfortunately need to point out that in Western Africa, 57% of children with childhood cancer are underdiagnosed. So global problems with both adult and the childhood cancers are huge. Estimated childhood cancer 5-year net survival. The survival in the United States is now in high 80s, but that's why it is dark green. But look at the survival in Latin and South America. It is true the 2 countries that have the highest survival for childhood cancer in that region are actually Argentina and Uruguay. But we are concentrating on Brazil. And Brazil, survival of childhood cancer, it's actually in low 60s, high 50%, and much more work needs to be done. And we need to ask ourselves, both from Latin and South America, as well for Africa, especially Africa, where a child has no chance of surviving a childhood cancer, can we continue to witness that one's postal code and not one's genetic code determines one's survival? And why such discrepancy? When we look at the cancer facts and figures, 80% of disability-adjusted life years lost to cancer are in low-middle-income countries. Yet, they receive only 5% of global funding for cancer control. You can say those are old data published in Lancet 2010. Not so fast. Here are new data published in 2021. 77% of disability-adjusted life years lost to cancer are in low-middle-income countries. So in more than 10 years, we really did not make much progress, and maybe now is the time to be more serious about the problem than ever. The Lancet Oncology Commission in 2015 decided that they have to look at global cancer surgery and expanding global access to radiotherapy. 5 years later, they had a sustainable care for children with cancer, another oncology commission. They all concluded the same way. There is a lack of clear, overarching global strategy for scaling up cancer imaging diagnostics across all low-middle-income countries. So what did that imaging commission found? Now, number one, very fast we realized there are no global benchmarks on the equipment. If there are no global benchmarks, how are you going to design any policy for improvement? So as we look at the CT scanners, we see that the world is very, very heterogeneous from green to yellow. Let's look at Latin and South America. Too many colors. As we look at Argentina, it is relatively well equipped with CT scanners compared to Brazil, and definitely Uruguay. Between the two of them, it's too light green. When we look at MRI scanners, and again, let's concentrate on Latin and South America, Brazil is relatively well equipped with MRI scanners, but we all know that majority of those are located in big cities such as São Paulo or Rio de Janeiro, and that we need much more granular, each state geared data. PET scanning, unfortunately, the Latin and South America really do not have sufficient PET CT scanners per 1 million inhabitants, and especially in oncology, it is one area that we really need to pay a lot of attention. How about global benchmarks for human resource, both radiologists and nuclear medicine physicians? When we look at radiology, then the two biggest countries, Brazil and Argentina, have relatively enough number of radiologists. If it makes us feel any better, the number of radiologists per 1 million inhabitants in Brazil and Argentina are higher than in UK or Italy. When we look at the nuclear medicine physician, Argentina has a relatively better number of nuclear medicine physicians per 1 million inhabitants than does Brazil. Interesting that Uruguay has a relatively good number of nuclear medicine physicians. To make comparison, the number of nuclear medicine physicians per 1 million inhabitants in Brazil match that of the UK. So the problem with both radiologists and nuclear medicine physicians is global. Unfortunately, as you can see, big parts of Africa have less than 1 of 1 to 5 nuclear medicine physicians per 1 million inhabitants. Cancer is a collaborative effort, and very often we say cancer is a team sport. And we should look not only at the number of radiologists, but number of oncologists per 1,000 new cases. Published in 2021, and let's concentrate on Brazil, the number of medical oncologists are actually better than they're in Canada. And then they look at hematologists and radiation oncologists. There is obviously lack of radiation oncologists. Unfortunately, they didn't look at radiologists, but will correct that in the next Lancet Commission. Another thing that I thought you may like to see is Uruguay. Uruguay actually has more medical oncologists per 1,000 new cases than does Brazil, and has more, almost twice as many, radiation oncologists per 1,000 new cases. Those data sometimes actually motivate you how to formulate new healthcare policies based on data. So what are the health and economic benefits of scaling up imaging and nuclear medicine? If we do nothing for the next 10 years, we will have 76 million cancer deaths, looking at 11 most common cancers. If we scale up only treatment and quality of care, treatment means surgery, radiation therapy, and medical oncology. Yes, we will do much better. We can avert 5.4 million. But treatment without imaging guidance is only half of the battle. If we add imaging, then we can avert 9.5 million, which is 12.5% of all cancer deaths worldwide. And this is why when we make policy, when we look at the healthcare reforms, it has to be both treatment and imaging. And return on investment. For every dollar invested, if we scale up only treatment, the return on investment is $6.15. But when we scale up quality of care, treatment, and imaging, that doubles. And this is why cancer care is a continuum. It's a team effort, and we really need to look at all aspects. So what are the key accomplishments of our commission? First of all, their first comprehensive global data collection on imaging and nuclear medicine, both equipment and workforce. Second, for the very first time, we were able to demonstrate that imaging has a substantial health benefit and therefore is essential in cancer care, and there is a compelling economic case for further investment in imaging and nuclear medicine. And our recommendations are actually simple. There's no question that imaging diagnostics must be part of essential benefit package when expanding universal health care. National cancer control plans should include imaging as well as all other therapy factors. Workforce development, there is tremendous shortage that you saw through investment and education. Collaboration is absolutely essential, and we have to invest in R&D to foster innovations in education and cancer imaging diagnostics. So looking at the research investments, percent of GDP in Latin and South America spent on research, on R&D. As you can see, Brazil spends relatively more than does, for example, adjacent country, Argentina or Chile or even Peru. But the 0.65% of GDP that we spend on research and development in Latin and South America is 3.4 times less than in developed countries, and we have to work in closing that gap. So leveraging our findings, what are the early accomplishments? One is having an opportunity to present data such as this meeting, for which I am very grateful. Then our data have been included in many industry business plans as they're approaching not only low-middle countries, but all countries around the world. IAEA initiatives, Rays of Hope, I'm sure many of you familiar with, really started with our commission. And then, very proud to say, JPR initiative, LELEX. We are deeply grateful to Dr. Cesar Nomura, Executive and Steering Committee, to taking this initiative to improve education. It isn't just the number of workforce that we have, but education of our own colleagues. WHO and UICC use our data in their policy, and happy to report WHA, which is a World Health Assembly resolution on diagnostics, will be voted upon in May, and immediately after that, we are actually preparing WHA resolution on imaging and image-guided therapy. So once that resolution is completed, imaging will have to be a part of every national health plan. And there was a U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in Washington in December 2022. President Biden extended the Cancer Moonshot Initiative to Africa and Latin and South America, and the commission is to look at the healthcare workforce, not just radiology, but all workforce in Africa and Latin America. The purpose of our commission, I'm very happy to say that I co-chair, which means radiology will be presented, is to define the scale of cancer healthcare workers' deficit and provide solutions inspired by moonshot principles that would help deliver safe, effective, and efficient healthcare to enable all patients to have equitable access to care at the time they need. And with this, just once again, saying thank you to this organization and its leaders for embracing LELEX, that I'm sure you'll hear a lot during the meeting. With this in mind, thank you. Thank you very, very much for your attention. Thank you.